A year and a half after its launch, let's revisit the modern Supreme. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. When this model first came out, I think I was too hard on it because it's not what its namesake is. But I happened to stumble across this absolutely fantastic top on this wine red version. And this guitar is actually part of the deal of how I acquired that really cool green Les Paul Custom that we had just documented for St. Patrick's Day. He decided he wanted something with modern playability without fret issues, etc. And that definitely works out for him. But let's go ahead and recap the Les Paul Modern Supreme. This model was first introduced in late 2023. Everyone was really excited for it because the original Les Paul Supremes have a cult following. Now the modernized version, basically they just have the name and the inlays. Everything else has been changed. It's more appropriate to think of them as a higher end, more blingy version of the Les Paul Modern. And I feel my last review of this model might have been a little bit clouded because I was upset it wasn't what I wanted it to be. But over a regular Les Paul Modern, you have your new chandelier headstock that's done up in mother of pearl. You get all the binding along there. The Moderns still have an ebony fretboard with mother of pearl inlays, so basically it's just your Super 400s that have changed on this particular guitar, but you get the multiply banded custom binding along the top as well. And these are currently being offered for $3,999, which is $1,000 more for what basically comes down to some cosmetics. But these are offered at all stores in a Fireburst finish, translucent ebony burst, which is what we reviewed the first time, and a wine red like we're looking at today, as well as the Gibson.com exclusive 3-pickup ebony. However, there are a few newcomers to be aware of. Guitar Center has an exclusive Sea Smoke version, which is a gorgeous guitar, but they do have a slight $200 premium to them. And then don't forget to check in with the Gibson Mod Collection. They do these things up all the time. We've seen some freaky ones, including some that get sprayed over binding for the whole widowed effect. So you certainly have some finish options if the Modern Supreme speaks to you. And if you're more of an SG or an ES guy, they also have these available in Supremes. But $4,000 for a Gibson USA product, that is very premium. This model bridges the gap between custom shop and Gibson USA production. The closest model that this one resembles is actually the Les Paul Axcess Custom, and those start at $5,799. So last time we compared it to a Supreme, now let's compare it to an Axcess Custom. You can see the Axcesses are a little bit thinner, and while both of them have a swept heel design, the true Axcess Custom is a little bit more effortless. They don't have any bumpy ridge on the edge. However, there are actually some players who prefer to still have that there because they like to anchor their thumb or something. I never knew that till the Matt Hafey episode. But you can see the Axcess Customs also get an additional comfort carve on the edge. However, you get chandeliers over here versus just your regular custom emblem, and we actually have a compound fretboard radius on the Modern Supremes where you don't get that on the current Axcess Customs. So this has some elements that this one doesn't have, like some fancy electronics. Usually done up on a PCB, you get coil splitting technology as well as direct to bridge and in and out of phase on your push-pull pots. Whereas on the old Rhino Axcess Custom, I do have coil splits on it, just none of the other fancy stuff. I'm not sure if the current day Axcess Customs have that or not. But if you're like, hey, this one's satin finish, nah, this is just the Rhino. Currently, you can get them in a straight jet ebony black, as well as a beautiful bangle burst. If you're trying to decide between these two models, in my opinion, if you have the additional budget to get the Axcess Custom, I would suggest going that route, unless a compound fretboard radius is something that's very important to you, or you happen to like the additional blinginess. That's what's kind of interesting about this model. Like, on paper, yes, I would select this. However, it's got a very blingy factor to it, and that's just comparing brand new pricing. When it comes to the used market, it becomes a little bit more cut and dry which one you should choose. This offers a lot of value for the money. But besides the guitar, let's go ahead and check out 2025's case. They're currently utilizing the black version with the Gibson logo. As far as the latches, it's the square style. Inside our black Gibson baggie, we've got another baggie with a Gibson polishing cloth, a Gibson strap, Gibson multi-tool, a poker chip if you wish to install it, as well as a blank truss rod cover if the Supreme branding's not for you. A please download the Gibson app thing, as well as our warranty information and pre-pack checklist, silica packet, case keys. And for historical preservation, here's the original box tag where you can see it is called the Modern Supreme internally within Gibson, as well as our original price tag. So to learn more about Randy's new guitar, let's go ahead and throw it over onto the Workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside our Wine Red Supreme, let's go ahead and check out these pickups. Our neck pickup is the Rhythm Pro Burst Bucker. You can see its patent applied for decal on the back. And the bridge pickup is the matching Lead Pro. That waxy residue you're seeing right there by our pull pieces, that's a good indication that these pickups have been potted, so they shouldn't squeal under high gain like a vintage pickup would. But within the circuit, without any fanciness on, it's 8.41 k ohms in the bridge, 7.58 in the neck. They play together at 399. But remember, we have coil tapping / splitting, which should, in theory, get you about half that reading. Sometimes these PCBs don't let that happen within the circuit, but this one goes direct to bridge. That's why the reading gets a little bit higher, because you're removing everything else out of the circuit. And that's why I say readings within the circuit. I do put that in there for a reason, because if you were to take a pickup out and read it directly, it's going to read a little bit hotter than within the circuit. So that one works. And then this one does your whole out of phase thing, which will only be pertinent in your middle position. As far as our neck pickup cavity, it's your regular short neck tenon marked WR for wine red. You can see the wine staining going over our maple top, joining onto our ultra modern weight relief mahogany body. That's the version that has the V shape and then the other little chambers. And our bridge pickup cavity is LPSU for Les Paul Supreme, and we get the 00 branding. And we can see some more of what we saw earlier just on the other side of it. But despite the modern weight relief, something else I don't think a lot of people realize is the channel route itself actually gets wider on examples like this to also help weight relieve it even more. You can see just how much room you're actually working with in there, whereas sometimes that's pretty tight. Next up, our bridge, it's Nashville in style. Done up by API, this one's actually full weight, and it has the bushings within the body, but with the convenience feature of being able to use a hex key to adjust your bridge as well as your thumb wheels. On the other hand, your golden tailpiece is lightweight aluminum by the same company. Now let's take a second just to appreciate this gorgeous top. It's a really dark finish, so you don't always get to appreciate it, but on the workbench or any bright lights, that's when you're met with this delectable treat. That's a really good top for one of these, in my opinion. It's completely even throughout too. Really glad we don't have pick guards on this model. But we're rocking 5-ply binding along the body with single ply around the neck. And that's a natural transition into our ebony fretboard here. I just conditioned it for him, so it's all good to go. And you get your real mother-of-pearl Super 400 inlays. It's the shape of a block, but it's got 2 strikes through it. But your next one only has 1, so that kind of helps you differentiate between every other one. Definitely more labor-intensive to do this inlay style over just regular blocks. It's quite fancy. Originated on the Super 400 archtop models. That's why we call them Super 400s. Now, if you're wondering what these splotches are, that just happens on a lot of modern day ebony coming out of Gibson USA. It's only super apparent right now because I just conditioned the board. But if you're not familiar with what a compound fretboard radius is, your chording areas usually start around 9 or 10, so you can see what kind of curve you have there within your fretboard. But then as you go up the neck into your soloing registers, it gets flatter. So we're talking about the curving of the fretboard right here. There's a good visual representation of that between 10 and 14 inches. What you should be looking at here is the bottom ridge. Now, to a player of my skill level, I've never really found that beneficial, but I've heard a lot of really skilled guys love that about these. I measure a 1.68 inch nut width, increasing to 2.08 by the 12. Our first fret neck depth is 0.8 and stays skinny, 0.89 by the 12. Here's a look at that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. Nearly has a D shape there. It gets really flat on the back, but then definitely transforms more into a C. Very slim though. Still maintains that rounded C shape. But now our headstock. So this design is called the chandelier. If I remember correctly, it came out of the Gibson archives from like the 1940s. At the time of recording, this is still the only model that you can get this on, and it's in Gibson USA, not the custom shop. Now, do I think one day we might see custom shop Supremes? In this version, maybe, but this also utilizes locking Grover tuners. They're done up in gold. We'll look at those on the back. But here we can see straight through to our mahogany neck, and our truss rod's in good shape. And we've got an up-close look at our Les Paul Supreme truss rod cover with a white back. Now that I've got it all strung back up, I wanted to mention this is real mother-of-pearl too. That's kind of a big deal within Gibson USA, similar to their inlays. A lot of the modern collection guitars get it for the inlays, but like all the traditional stuff, no, they go for the acrylic to be 50s correct and save mother-of-pearl custom emblems, etc. just for the custom shop. So that's a cool thing about these guys. Moving on to the back, fun fact about the wine red, out of all the current offerings, this is the only one that has a transparent finish on the back. So you get to appreciate all your mahogany wood grain here, and you can see that it is a 2-piece. But here's what you're rocking under the hood. You've got a printed circuit board that has 4 push-pull pots, CTS in style. And if you don't love the pickups these come stock with, you can order any pickup off of Gibson.com that has these white quick connectors. Or even on the used market on Reverb for that matter. But again, white connectors. The early generation utilized gray, which is different. Or if you want to utilize a different pickup, all you have to do is snip them off down here and connect your pickup to that, and then you can use whatever you want in here. So if Seymour Duncan or something's more your style, you can do that and then have all the fanciness. Just make sure you get your wires right. You've got your golden output jack plate, the new large style strap buttons in both of your usual locations. Here's your toggle switch cavity, which by the way is also on a quick connect, so if something ever goes wrong, Gibson can easily send you a replacement, or you can buy one without having to pay a tech $100 to put it in. Here we can take a second to appreciate our heel cut. It just gets a little bit more out of your way there as compared to the full Les Paul body thickness. But surprisingly, this model utilizes thin binding in the cutaway. You can see a little bit of the maple top exposed. Otherwise, you're just seeing the single banded binding along the rest of the edge. And here's the side profile shot of the guitar as you would be playing it. Now we can run up the back side of the neck. Lots of good mahogany wood grain. And then here's our locking Grover tuners. So the way to lock them is right on the back here. You turn them left and right to loosen and lock them tight. However, this is for ease of string change. And if you don't like them, you can always use them as regular tuners and just forget that they're locking. That's mainly a personal preference thing. If you know how to stretch strings in, you don't necessarily need them outside of them saving you time. But this one dates to the 220th day of 2024, initial batch, production number 351. Made in USA, Nashville. But all said and done, I think Randy's going to be happy with this. He could only ever play that old Les Paul for one song, then had to put it back because it was 10 pounds. This one, 2 pounds lighter, 8 pounds, 3.3 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this one sounds. Quite versatile even before we mess around with anything else. Now let's mess around with our taps. Love them or hate them, you've got those tones if you need them. And your direct to bridge, doesn't matter where your toggle switch is, you go direct to the bridge. You can tell it just gets a little bit hotter, more noticeable in the distorted channel. Lastly is our out of phase. So we'll go back to our previous demo riff. that kind of quacky tone. Now let's kick some dirt on. So there we go, the Modern Supreme, 1.5 years after its reintroduction. What are my final thoughts on this one? It's basically for somebody who loves everything about the Les Paul Modern, but wants it to be a little bit fancier. It bridges the gap between Custom Shop and USA beautifully, and even has some features like the compound fretboard radius that you don't find on many Custom Shop models. I don't think it's going to be a model that is necessarily for everyone, simply because of where it falls in the price range of Gibson. I'm sure there's a lot of guys who'd be plenty happy with a Les Paul Standard over one of these, even though they're a little bit less expensive. But you gotta pay for all the fancy blingage. So alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed and learned something you can use out of this episode. We'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.